We're going to start with the big news involving Dominic Solanke. Tottenham in advanced talks with Bournemouth to sign the striker. It's understood that the approach was made yesterday. Quakey, just how big a deal is this for Spurs?
This is huge because we know how much Spurs struggled with an out-and-out striker last season. Of course, Son did what Son does and he can play in multiple positions, and Richarlison struggled as well. But you saw how well Solanke did for Bournemouth last year, and he finally found his feet in the Premier League. He's been a menace in the Championship for a long, long time, scored a lot of goals. But last season was the first year that we really saw the Dominic Solanke that we expected to see when he was at Chelsea's academy. Chelsea's academy player of the season, 14-15, people expected huge things for him. Obviously got that move to Liverpool, didn't really work out, but Klopp obviously saw something in him. Took a step back, went to Bournemouth, and like I say, he's found his feet, and he's playing under a progressive manager in Iraola, and I think that's what's attractive about Solanke, the fact that he's playing under a manager that kind of plays football with some of these top sides in the Premier League play as well. Last year he scored 19 league goals, obviously a breakout season, and I expect him to kick on. He's only 26 years old. If you compare him to some of his compatriots, Ollie Watkins, who started for England at the Euros, he's 28. So Solanke's still got time as a striker, he's still developing. Obviously there's attributes that he needs to work on, but for Spurs, they're getting a striker that is full of confidence and is ready to take that next step and hopefully help them achieve Champions League football next season.
Do you think it's a big loss for Bournemouth?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at their style of play last season, a lot of their style was built around Dom Solanke. Can they get it into... They almost used him as a big man, but like an athletic big man. They were firing it into him, he was holding it up, dropping it off to other players in the box. He scored one of the goals that he scored last year, was probably one of my favourite, where he picks up and the defender's right behind him and he rolls the defender and scores. Like, he's got like so many different assets to his game. To replace that when you've built a style around a striker is very, very difficult. But I do also think Bournemouth have such a consistent style that they'll find another striker. Like Unyal was there last season, who I think has got a lot of potential. So I think they might be okay.
Right, before we brought you this news, we spoke to Tottenham head coach Ange Postecoglou about potential incomings. This is what he had to say.
I'd like to think in every window so far we have strengthened. Certainly last year we brought in some fantastic footballers, and in January we obviously brought in Rada Dragusin, and I think he'll be an important part. We brought in Timo Werner, and so far we brought in two young guys. Obviously Archie Gray, who's a fantastic young talent, and Lucas joins us, even though we signed him in January. But we've still got work to do. There's no doubt about that. And that's the nature of the transfer market. For me, it's I have just as much anxiety because it's a part of the year I have least control over. It'd be great if I had total control over everything, including what other clubs did, but that doesn't happen. And so I understand where the fans sit with it, and again, my role within that is to try and stay calm, stay disciplined, and make sure that come the end of the window, which is the most important time, that we've had another positive window in that we've made our squad and our team stronger.
Ange saying there that he gets anxiety. He's like one of the coolest, calmest people I've ever seen.
Yeah, he wants control over everything.
Yeah, who doesn't? Is Solanke what he needs?
Well, Spurs definitely must find a striker. I think that was very apparent from last year with the lack of options. Obviously, a huge transitional year for the football club without Harry Kane. That was always going to be a huge gap to fill. And like Nabeed said yesterday, you're never going to get a like for Harry Kane. It's impossible. But we saw last year with Son spending time through the middle, with Richarlison sometimes playing through the middle, it was very difficult for them to find the one. So I think that was top of Spurs' list. With it being Dom Solanke, like Quaker said, I think he possesses attributes that can really be conducive to Ange Postecoglou's style of play. I think the fact that they play a high press, they play on the front foot. There's a lot of movement in that front line. They're quite dynamic. He wants his wingers getting to the byline and getting crosses in the box. He wants his wingers on the front foot providing chances. And also, if there is going to be a striker who can knit that together and hold the ball up and bring people into play, Dominic Solanke has shown that he can definitely do that at Bournemouth. And most importantly, putting the ball in the back of the net. He's proved in last season that he's clinical. The big situation, or the big sort of talking point around this is, I feel like Dominic Solanke's name can be a little bit scoffed at. Sort of, maybe Spurs fans might feel, Dominic Solanke, I'm not sure about that. He's from Bournemouth. He only had one season at this level. There's not a big sample size of Dominic Solanke performing at the numbers that he did last year, so that's a risk. The best part of £60 million is a big outlay, but when you're talking about English players, when you're talking about putting the ball in the back of the net, these are all premium, and these are difficult to come by. So I think it's 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. But also, what I think is key is that when you look at Spurs in the last 18 months to 2 years, with some of the players they've been bringing in, they've got a really good track record of bringing in players who haven't necessarily been household names, haven't necessarily been at the top of the game in world football, etc. You look at Destiny Udogie, look how well he's done. He was on loan the season before last. Pedro Porro, he's come in, looks fantastic. Van der Ven, revelation last year. Vicario, brilliant. Kulusevski, before he got here from Juventus. It's players who kind of get to Spurs and then go on the up. So I feel like Dominic Solanke could actually be one of the surprises for people who are thinking that's not name brand enough. I think it goes hand in hand.
I really like him. I do have like a concern about that one season because I looked at the stats and I also felt when I was watching Bournemouth play, obviously it's very difficult because he plays for a Bournemouth side that are not going to win every week. So his form is also going to be similar to his team's. But in the first 18 games of the season, scored 12 goals. In the last 18 games, scored 7. So I think he definitely slowed down, and therefore I feel there was definitely a purple patch because within those first 12 goals, there was 6 in 4 games. So I think there's definitely a purple patch there, and that's my only real sticking point.
But I think he might have been worn down by the end of the season. The best ability is availability. He played all 38 Premier League games, which is a feat for a striker that's relied to get most of the goals for his side. And so I think that could be a big part of it. You talked about the fee, £65 million release clause. A lot was made of that at the beginning of the summer when he was linked with other top clubs. But that's just the name of the game in terms of top English talents. And also there's a 20% sell-on clause to Liverpool as well, which probably affects the fee. So I think this is a deal that probably gets done because it works for both parties. And like you mentioned, Bournemouth have done a great job of replacing players when they leave, and I expect them to do that again, especially under Iraola, and they'll be able to find a player not exactly like Solanke, but someone who shares that profile as well.